All right, so what one did you say? 14? All right, so we're on page 146, 14. So it says secant plus 1 over sine is somehow supposed to equal 1 plus cosine over sine cosine. All right. Anybody have any ideas here? 1 over cosine. Oh, so you're thinking on the left side, change it all into sine and cosine? Okay, I like it. 1 over cosine plus 1 all over sine. Okay, I like that. Then what? So simplify. Okay, so we got to bring this sine up, flip it to 1 over sine, and distribute, right? When I do that, I get 1 over sine cosine plus 1 over sine, right? Now, you're basically there. You have two choices. You can either find a common denominator, put those together, because I have two fractions on this side, I have one on this side, right? So I can either find a common denominator, put those together, or I can split this one into two fractions. The choice is yours of which two you want to do there. Split it, save some paper. So this split would be 1 over the sine cosine plus the cosine over the sine cosine. And then the cosines cancel, and you just get, that's where your 1 over sine comes from. Now, that's probably the easiest mental approach to doing this proof. Somebody first hour had a great idea. And the great idea, to me, is pretty obvious once you see it. What's the only thing missing out of the denominator on this side? Well, great. Let's pull that trick out of the back pocket, and let's just multiply by cosine. Right? Like, we always have that in our back pocket. We can always do that. Now, what made us think to do that? Because now my denominator's done, right? I gave myself the denominator. So that part is done. Now, yeah, what do you think we still want to do with that secant? So we're probably going to want to go 1 over cosine and now distribute. Cosine times 1 over cosine is 1 plus cosine. Now, this was a much quicker, faster approach, right? But it actually took that harder tip. Like it took that, you know, that trick out of our back pocket that we go, hey, I can multiply by 1 anytime I want. What made that person first hour think to do this? I'm just trying to match my denominators. I'm giving myself the denominator. And now I'm hoping the top works. If you do that, cool. Do you have to do it this way? Absolutely not. The other way works just fine. Yes?
So where did you just pull those two cosines out of? Did you just write it?
Thin air. That was the equivalent of, like, remember on 32, 33, 34, at the end of those where we multiplied by the 1, gave ourselves the numerator? Well, in this case, they said, well, I'm just going to give myself make the denominator match. I have sine cosine over here. Let's multiply by cosine so I have sine cosine. And let's just fingers crossed we can get the top to match. And it actually does work out pretty easily. The top works too. Again, there's multiple ways to do these. You just have a few tricks in your back pocket that you can pull out anytime you want. You can multiply by 1 anytime you want. You can change things into sine and cosine anytime you want. You know, there's different approaches you can take. All right. What else you got on the 146 assignment? 16 and 18.
Oh, I knew it. Oh, then you need to do number 6.
6? Okay. This one actually doesn't take much.
When I did the thing, it didn't work, so I just never tried it. But
And I don't care if you do step 2 on this one, because I actually want you to recognize right at the top, aren't cosine and secant reciprocals of each other? What happens if you ever multiply any number by its reciprocal? Now, if you didn't see that right from there, and you have to change it into 1 over cosine before you multiply to get to 1, fine. Same thing over here. Aren't tangent and cotangent reciprocals of each other? Now, if you have to change it into sine over cosine and cosine over sine to see that they cancel, or change this to 1 over tangent to get them to cancel, whatever. But yeah, this one is, yeah, that one you just got to get to 1. 20? Okay. So 20 says secant times sine plus tangent all over cosine times cotangent is supposed to equal 2 sine squared over cosine cubed. Okay, well, any ideas of where to start? Yeah, I would start on the left here. I got secants, I got tangents and cotangents. The whole right side is nothing but sine and cosine. Let's start with that. Like, let's get it to sine and cosine. So secant is what? Times sine. Wouldn't that be sine over cosine? Plus sine over cosine. Now that's a really good thing. Why is that a really good thing? Because I get 2 of something. I need 2 of something, don't I? Well, great. Now I'm making progress. I got a cosine times a cosine over sine. Well, that's going to give me cosine squared over sine. Is everybody okay with me doing that? Good? Okay. Well, my numerator is 2 sine over cosines over this, cosine squared over sine. All I did was I got 1 of these, I got 2 of those, now I got 2 of those.
So the cosine on the bottom doesn't get 1? Or does it get 2?
No, because it's 2 over 1. If you put 2 over 2, it'd be 1. So you got to have 2 over 1. Okay, what's left to do here?
Then once you change the sign and
Flip it. So you got a sine over cosine squared, multiply across, and you got 2 sine squareds over cosine of the third. And I'm done. Now, is there other ways? Probably. And, don't be afraid to do weird things like, all right, if I wanted to, I could have changed that sine squared. Like that's an option. It didn't work for this one. What else could you do with a cosine to the third? What about, don't be afraid to do stuff like this. Isn't cosine to the third the same thing as squared times cosine?
Yeah.
You can absolutely change that, which I could turn this really easily into 2 tangent squared over cosine, couldn't I? Because where do I get the tangent squared from? I got sine squared over cosine squared now, don't I? And then I have that extra cosine, which just stays in the bottom. So I'm not saying this was a good approach for this particular proof, but if you ever see something to the third power, you absolutely can just change that into like a squared and a single, which means now I can do stuff with the squared or I can do stuff with the single individually. Does that kind of make sense? So don't necessarily look at a cube and get scared, because you can always do stuff like that. Okay? Now that's different than if you ever see something like sine cubed plus cosine cubed. Because remember, how does that factor? Remember we did these. Anybody remember how that factors? Remember it'd be sine plus cosine. And then it's the first one squared. Opposite the product. And then the second one squared. Remember doing those? So, like if you ever see a sine cube like this, cosine cube, that's different. I wouldn't separate those like I did the last one. Because if you see some or difference of cubes, that's just something that's, you got to know how to factor those. And then, yeah, like I got a sine squared plus a cosine squared, so I could turn this into a 1 pretty easily, right? And then from there, I'd be looking, I don't know, maybe there's something I got to cancel. Maybe there's a denominator that goes with this, right? So don't forget about those. We did those a while ago, right? And I'll be honest with you, if you ever see something like this in a proof, 99% of the time, if you know how to factor it, that's the easiest proof on the whole page. If you don't know how to factor it, that's the hardest one on the page. It's you either know how to factor it or you don't. And if you know, it's an easy proof. If you don't, just skip that one. Huh?
I said you should factor.
I just did.
Oh, jeez.
I just did factor it. This factors into that. Remember, it's your cube root. That's where the sine and the cosine come from. First one squared. Opposite the product, where you multiply them together and you go the opposite of it. Second one squared. Vaguely remember doing those? Yeah. So if one of those shows up on the quest tomorrow, that might be one you skip. But remember, so here's how the proof or the quest tomorrow is going to work. There's 8 proofs. You don't have to do all 8. Pick any 6. So if this does show up and Riley thinks, oh, I know how to factor those. Those are easy. We just did one yesterday. Great. That can be one of your 6. If you look at it and go, I don't remember how to factor that, great. That's one of your 2 that you can skip. Okay?
Yeah. But you should do us a courtesy and not make like 4 of them half factor.
Well, yeah. I'm not gonna do that because that either makes it, pass or fail basically on one skill. I'm not gonna do that.
That's that every time.
So, all right. What else we got on this page? Anything? Easy stuff?
Yeah, kind of. I did the rest of them by myself, so I just did it. 5 minutes in.
Okay. For the quest tomorrow, like there's not going to be any surprises. There really isn't. Guarantee you there will be no surprises. I'm just going to take 8 of these. Some of them come straight from, well, no. Some of them do come from this page. Some of them do come from the page 143.
Are there going to be any that are like no answer?
No, I did not put any of them that are no answer on the quest. You should be able to solve all 8 of them. Okay?
Turn these into the basket?
Yes, just put those in the basket. All right. So again, I'll tell you where I got all the proofs from. I took them from 3 spots. 3 spots. Well, really it's 2 spots, or you could also consider it 4 spots. So I took them either from straight out of page 143, straight out of page 146, 147, that homework, straight out of today's homework that I'm going to give you, Or I found out of Michigan Virtual something that I just chose not to use for the virtual kids, and I kind of hid it. They had a worksheet of some more of these basic proofs. They're basically exactly the same. I took a few of those. But I don't think those are any more difficult than the ones we've done. Actually, I think most of the ones off of that worksheet were, I would say, medium, like easy medium to medium, basically, you know. I don't think they're too bad. So honestly, if I gave you, and you had time, and you had the motivation to do it, if you could redo page 143, if you can do all of those, you're going to find the quest tomorrow super easy. You really will. If there's a bunch of those off of page 143 that you look at and still can't do those, yeah, you're going to struggle tomorrow on the quest again. Like it's. Uh-huh. Yeah. It is a quest. Yeah, there'll be a retake. Okay, here's what I want you guys to do today. Everybody take a look at page 147. This is going to be part of your homework tonight. Part.